It's December. I live here in Southern California in zone 9A, and behind me you can see the fava beans that we're going to be talking about today. And it's about fava beans and beginner gardener tips. So the first time I ever had a backyard was 3 Decembers ago, December 2021. And that's all the time that I've been gardening. And you can see that when we started, it was a fill dirt, non-good soil, like literally just construction grade fill dirt soil. And one of the things that helped me get off to the races with gardening besides YouTube was fava beans. So tip number one for beginning gardeners around fava beans is if you're just starting with a blank slate of soil, or you ripped up some grass, or you're just growing on a brand new kind of raised bed, buy a pound of fava beans. Just buy a bag, a full pound of fava beans. And then, because one of the things as a beginner gardener is when you buy these little packets, they you only have 8 of them. And so you feel this scarcity of you don't have very many shots of this and you don't want to mess it up. When you go and buy a pound of a seed. And then the other thing that's good about fava beans is look at the seeds. The seeds are full on bean size. So when you're starting out, you don't have to do really little seeds or feel like you forget where you bury them or whatever. That's another good thing about them. And then your fava beans add nitrogen to the soil. So that's where some people just use them as cover crops, and cover crops means that you don't even have to eat the food or whatever, which is, it sounds bad or whatever, because again, you're getting into backyard gardening because you want to grow the food and get used to it and things like that. But it's actually easier to just start with something that's going to throw off a lot of green and a lot of matter so that you can just feel like you're getting going. And fava beans don't need good soil because they don't need nitrogen in the soil. They add nitrogen into the soil. The other thing that's great about them is that they just throw off so much green matter, so many green leaves, and they just are so big themselves. They'll grow to 6 feet high, like corn stalks, but they don't have to, then that's fine. You can use it as a cover crop and just for example, we got a bunch of rain today and this one's kind of flopping over. And so as a beginner gardener, sometimes you're nervous, oh man, the plant's damaged or whatever. No dude, it's all good. Just chop off the part that's fallen over. And then the great thing about that is growing them and chopping them down is that then it just really adds to your composting, and you're able to level up your composting, because again, as a beginning gardener, sometimes you have just a lot of food scraps, as you can see here, but you don't have a lot of actual plant material because you're getting used to growing it. And so this will be so good for your composting journey, is growing the fava beans, chopping them down, and adding to your compost. You can see how these ones are more bushy from not being staked all the way. And so they're just growing wild, just kind of more like a bush. And then you can see over here that these ones haven't grown out as much. And that's because the soil isn't as developed over here. So here we've ran multiple seasons now of the fava beans. Here, this is my first time planting out this bed. And so you can see how the sun is different over here and the soil is different over here. Just put them in the ground randomly anywhere that you're trying to build the soil. For example, here's our front yard, and so they look kind of funny right here, but I'm just putting them in here, and I'm gonna go to cut them down. Just leave the roots in the ground. Cut them down as close to the base as possible. Leave the roots in the ground, make your compost pile, and then dump your compost back on top of those roots and cover them so that you're good to go, for the next round. Is what keeps all the beneficial kind of work that you just did in the ground. And so you're building the soil over time, and doing this over and over and over again is how you'll just get better at gardening. And so this is coming from someone who's not an expert, just someone who literally started with a blank slate backyard 2 years ago, threw these seeds in the ground with watching a lot of YouTube myself, and kind of just started to make it happen. And so fava beans give you momentum as a beginner gardener because they grow in anything, and they just put out a lot of growth that you can use to kind of build your soil. So if that's cool, watch this next one and we'll see you there.